Hello and good evening. Thank you for joining for tonight's dark and scary cryptid horror stories. Let us know in the comments where you are listening from and if there is a cryptid you would like me to make a story on. Now for tonight's stories, I hope you enjoy. The Thunderbird Calls. The grizzly bear had weighed 800 pounds in life. In death, it hung 70 feet above the forest floor, impaled on the branches of a Sitka spruce that had stood for 3 centuries. Its ribcage had been cracked open like an eggshell, the bones spread wide, the organs within long since devoured. And its fur, thick, brown, matted with blood, had been stripped away in patches, revealing the meat beneath. Elias Creed had seen many things in his 30 years as a park ranger. He had seen moose gored by their own kind during mating season. He had seen wolves bring down caribou, the pack working with terrible efficiency. He had seen salmon runs so thick that the streams seemed to flow silver instead of water. But he had never seen anything like this. He stood at the base of the tree, his hand unconsciously resting on the grip of his service weapon, and stared up at the carcass. The bear's eyes were gone, pecked out by birds or something worse. Its tongue lolled from its mouth, black and swollen. And its heart, the massive heart that had powered its furious existence, was missing. "What the hell?" Creed whispered, and his breath fogged in the cold Alaskan air. He had found the bear at dawn, following a trail of blood that had started 3 miles back. The trail had been strange from the beginning, not the spatter of a wounded animal, but the steady drip of something being carried. Something heavy, something dead. He had expected to find a kill site, a place where wolves or a mountain lion had taken down prey too large to move. He had not expected to find the prey in a tree. His radio crackled. "Creed, you copy? Over." He keyed the mic. "This is Creed, I'm at coordinates." He checked his GPS. "North 61.2, west 149.8. I've got something here, something weird." "Define weird, Elias." "Dead grizzly, 800 pounds, 70 feet up in a tree." Silence, then say again. "You heard me, Sarah. Something killed a bear, something strong enough to lift it, and something that wanted it in a tree." Another silence, longer this time. "Elias, I'm getting calls from the villages. Weird calls. People saying there's something in the sky, something big, something that's blocking out the sun." "Bird." "No bird I ever heard of. Sarah in Willow says her kid saw it over the tree line. Said it had feathers bigger than her arms. Said it had claws like kitchen knives." Creed looked up at the bear again, at the claw marks on the bark, deep and wide, at the pattern of destruction, which suggested something had climbed this tree while carrying an 800-pound predator. "I'm coming back," he said. "We need to talk to the elders, the native ones, the ones who know the old stories." "You think this is, what, some kind of animal we haven't documented?" "I think it's something worse." He hiked back to his truck through forest that suddenly felt alien, hostile. The birds were silent. The squirrels had vanished. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, waiting. At the ranger station in Deadwood, Sarah Chen was waiting with a stack of reports and a face that had gone pale. She was 29, a wildlife biologist from Seattle who had come to Alaska seeking adventure and found more than she had bargained for. 3 more, she said before Creed could even sit down. All in the last 12 hours, a moose in Wasilla, 2 hikers near Denali, all of them, up in trees, all of them, opened up, hearts missing. Same pattern. Same, exactly the same. Something with claws, something with strength, something that likes high places. Creed spread the photos across his desk. The moose, smaller than the bear but just as dead, hung from a birch tree. The hikers. He stopped, looked closer. "Sarah, these are human." "I know." "Who were they?" "John and Mary Ketchum, from Ohio, on their honeymoon." Creed set the photos down carefully. "Have we contacted the FBI?" "They won't come, not yet, not without proof it's a human killer, and we can't prove that because whatever did this, it's not human. Then what is it? Sarah reached for a folder, opened it, spread out pages of drawings and notes. I talked to William Crow, she said. He's Passamaquoddy, from the East originally, but he's lived here for 40 years. He told me things. What things? He told me about the Thunderbird. Creed had heard the stories, of course. Everyone who worked in Alaska had heard the stories. The Thunderbird, the great spirit of the sky, the creature whose wings created thunder and whose eyes shot lightning. A legend, a myth, a story to tell tourists. But Sarah wasn't smiling. William says the Thunderbird is real, she continued. Says it sleeps for centuries deep in the mountains. Says it wakes when the world is out of balance, when humans violate the sacred places, when the old agreements are broken. And you believe him? I believe what I see, she tapped the photos. I believe an 800-pound bear doesn't climb trees. I believe something with claws big enough to crack a grizzly's ribs is not documented in any scientific literature. And I believe, she lowered her voice, that I heard something last night, something in the sky, something that made the ground shake. Thunder. Not thunder, wingbeats. Creed looked at her for a long moment. Sarah was serious. Sarah was scared. And Sarah was not prone to imagination. Get me everything William told you. Every detail, every name, every ritual. Why? Because if there's even a chance he's right, we need to know what we're dealing with. The stories came in fragments over the next 3 days. Elders from a dozen tribes, Passamaquoddy, Tlingit, Haida, Tsimshian, each with their own version of the legend, each with their own warnings. The Thunderbird was ancient, older than humans, older than mountains. It had been born in the time before time, when the earth was young and the spirits walked freely. It was a guardian, a protector. It watched over the sacred places, the ley lines, the places where the world's energy gathered. It slept for centuries, waking only when those places were threatened. And when it woke, it was hungry. Not for meat, the elders said, not for flesh. The Thunderbird fed on energy, on the life force of the creatures it killed, on the hearts that it consumed. The heart is the seat of the soul, William Crow had explained, his ancient face carved with lines that spoke of knowledge accumulated over 80 years. The Thunderbird takes the heart to release the spirit, to return it to the cycle. It is not cruel, it is necessary. But it's killing people, Creed had protested. Because people have violated the sacred, Crow said. Someone has disturbed its nest, someone has broken the old agreements, and now it wakes, and now it hunts. How do we stop it? Crow had looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. You don't stop the Thunderbird, Ranger, you appease it. You restore what was broken, you give back what was taken. And if we can't, then you run. You run, and you pray that it is satisfied with what it has already taken. Creed didn't run. Instead, he called in every favor he had, pulled every string, and learned what had been happening in the mountains while he had been counting bears and issuing camping permits. Uranium mining. That was the answer. A Canadian company, Northern Resource Development, had been drilling test shafts near an old Sioux reservation in Montana, just across the border from Alaska's southeastern panhandle. They had been at it for months, blasting and drilling and extracting, and they had recently hit something. A cavern deep underground, filled with strange rocks and stranger bones. The company had called it a geological anomaly. The workers had called it something else. One had quit after claiming he heard singing coming from the rocks. Another had vanished, walked into the woods and never come back. And 3 days ago, the drilling had reached a depth of 2,000 feet, and something had risen from the hole. Creed found the connection on the 4th day. The attacks, the bear, the moose, the hikers, they formed a line. A straight line running from the mining site in Montana through the Alaskan panhandle, following what the elders called a spirit path. A ley line, a line of power. The Thunderbird was following the path. It was moving towards something, or away from something, or protecting something. Creed was studying the map when Sarah burst into his office. "Elias, you need to see this, now." She dragged him to the communications room, where a television was playing footage from a farm in Montana. A grainy, shaky video, filmed by a terrified farmer named Jed Haskins. The video showed a field, cows grazing peacefully, and then shadow, darkness spreading across the field like ink in water, the cows looking up, terrified, stampeding, and then something descending from the sky. Creed couldn't make out details. The video was too poor, the light too strange, but he saw enough. Wings, massive wings spreading across the entire field, claws reaching down, and eyes, red eyes burning like fire, looking directly at the camera. The cows vanished. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, lifted into the sky by something that didn't seem to touch them, just darkness and wind and the sound of thunder. Then the camera fell, the screen went black. "Jed Haskins is alive," Sarah said quietly. "Barely. He's in a hospital in Great Falls, keeps saying the same thing. It wasn't hunting, it was warning, it wasn't hunting, it was warning." "Warning of what?" "I don't know, but I know someone who might." She handed him a file. Inside was a photograph of a woman, young, Native American, with dark hair and serious eyes. Dr. Lena Aponi, anthropologist, University of Washington. She's been studying Thunderbird legends for 6 years. She's on her way here now. "Why?" "Because I called her and because," Sarah hesitated, "because she's seen it, 2 years ago, in Washington State. She was doing field work on the Olympic Peninsula when something came out of the mountains. Something that killed 3 people and left them in trees, just like here. And she survived. She says she talked to it, says she sang to it, says it let her live." Creed looked at the photograph, at the serious eyes, at the face of a woman who had looked into something ancient and terrible and lived to tell the tale. "When does she arrive?" "Tomorrow." "Then tomorrow," Creed said, "we find out if we're dealing with a legend or a nightmare." Dr. Lena Aponi arrived on a morning when the sky was the color of bruises and the air smelled of ozone and old snow. She was smaller than Creed had expected, barely 5.5 feet tall, but she carried herself with a confidence that spoke of someone who had faced death and found it wanting. "Ranger Creed," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for meeting me." "Dr. Aponi, I understand you've seen our problem before." "I've seen something. I'm not sure it's the same thing. The Thunderbird takes many forms, many manifestations. What I saw in Washington might have been different from what you're dealing with here." "But similar." "Similar enough." She looked around the ranger station, her eyes cataloging everything. "You've had 3 attacks. 4 now. A caribou herd was hit last night. 20 animals, all up in trees, all hearts missing." Lena's face went pale. That's not right. The Thunderbird doesn't hunt like that. It doesn't take multiple kills. It takes what it needs and moves on." "What does it need?" "Hearts, one at a time, enough to sustain it until it finds a new nest." She paused. "Unless." "Unless what?" "Unless it's preparing. Unless it's building strength for something. Unless." She looked at Creed, and her eyes were filled with a fear he hadn't seen before. "Unless it's protecting a nest." "You mean young?" "I mean an egg. The Thunderbird lays once every 1,000 years. If it's laying, if it's preparing to lay, then nothing will stop it. Nothing will satisfy it. It will hunt until the world is empty or the egg is hatched." Creed felt cold spread through his chest. Where would it nest? Somewhere sacred, somewhere powerful, somewhere on the ley lines. She pulled out her own map, marked with symbols and notations he didn't recognize. "I've been tracking the attacks. They form a pattern. They're converging here." She pointed to a spot on the map. a mountain range in the Alaska Panhandle near the Canadian border, a place called the Sacred Headwaters. The Tlingit call it the place where the thunder sleeps. They say it's where the first Thunderbird was born, where the first lightning struck the earth and woke the world. And you think it's nesting there. I think it's going there. I think it's moving toward the place of its birth to lay its egg, and when it does, she trailed off. When it does what? When it does, everything changes. The egg will hatch, the young will feed, and the world will burn. They left for the Sacred Headwaters the next morning, Creed, Lena, and Sarah, plus 2 other rangers, Mike Torres and Dave Cheney. They traveled by truck as far as they could, then switched to snowmobiles, then to snowshoes when the terrain became too rough even for machines. The mountains rose around them, ancient and indifferent, their peaks lost in perpetual clouds. The air grew thinner, colder, more charged with electricity. Creed's skin prickled with static, and his hair stood on end even when there was no wind. "We're close," Lena said on the second day. "Can you feel it?" "Feel what?" "The power. It's like standing next to a generator, like the air itself is vibrating." Creed couldn't feel it, not the way she described, but he could feel something, a weight, a presence, the sense of being watched by eyes that were not human. They made camp that night in a valley between 2 peaks, sheltered from the worst of the wind. Lena built a fire and sat by it, singing softly in a language Creed didn't recognize. "What is that?" he asked. "A lullaby. My grandmother taught me. It's supposed to soothe the spirits, to show respect." "Does it work?" "It worked in Washington. The Thunderbird heard me, it looked at me, and then it flew away." "Why?" "Because I showed respect, because I acknowledged what it was, because I didn't try to fight it or trap it or understand it. I just let it be. And that's enough. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes." They sat in silence, watching the fire, listening to the wind, and then the wind changed. It wasn't gradual. One moment the air was still, the next it was screaming, a howling gale that tore at their clothes and sent sparks flying from the fire. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds, and Creed felt ice forming on his eyelashes. "It's coming," Lena whispered. "Don't move, don't look up, don't show fear." "What is it?" "The Thunderbird, it's here." Creed wanted to look. Every instinct screamed at him to look, to see what was making that sound, that deep, rhythmic thunder that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. But he kept his eyes on the fire, his body still, his breathing slow. The thunder grew louder, closer. The air pressure changed, making his ears pop, and he felt a shadow pass overhead, massive, impenetrable, blocking out the stars. And then the smell, ozone and rot, the smell of lightning-struck trees and dead things left in the sun, the smell of something ancient and hungry and terribly, terribly alive. It circled them, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. Each pass brought the thunder closer, the shadow darker, the smell stronger. Creed could feel his heart hammering in his chest, could feel his body trembling with the effort of remaining still. Then Lena began to sing. Her voice was soft at first, barely audible over the wind. But it grew stronger, clearer, carrying a melody that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than human memory. The words were in Passamaquoddy or something older, and they spoke of respect and acknowledgement and the eternal cycle of life and death. The thunder paused. Lena kept singing. Her eyes were closed, her face tilted toward the sky, and she seemed to glow in the firelight, not with heat but with something else. Something that made Creed's skin prickle and his breath catch. The shadow descended. Creed could see it now without looking up, a darkness so complete it seemed to swallow the light. Feathers the size of oars, claws like scythes, and eyes, red eyes burning like coals, fixed on Lena's upturned face. She didn't stop singing. She sang of the Thunderbird's power, of its glory, of its role as guardian and protector. She sang of the old agreements, the sacred balance, the way the world was meant to be. And the Thunderbird listened. It hovered there 20 feet above them, its wings creating a windstorm that threatened to extinguish the fire. It listened to Lena's song, and its eyes, those terrible, burning eyes, seemed to soften. Then it screamed. The sound was like nothing Creed had ever heard. It was thunder and tearing metal and the death scream of 1,000 animals all combined into one terrible cry. It ripped through the air, shattered the silence, and sent Creed to his knees with his hands pressed to his ears. When he could hear again, the Thunderbird was gone. Lena had collapsed by the fire, blood running from her nose, her eyes wide and unfocused. "Lena," Creed scrambled to her side. "Lena, are you okay?" It answered," she whispered. "It answered me." "What did it say?" It said, help me." "Help it, help the Thunderbird." "Yes." Lena gripped his arm, her fingers digging in with desperate strength. "Elias, something is wrong, something is very wrong. The Thunderbird isn't hunting because it's hungry, it's hunting because it's afraid." "Afraid of what?" "I don't know, but it's protecting something, something precious, and whatever it's protecting, whatever it's afraid of, it's coming." She looked up at the sky, where the stars were slowly reappearing. "It's coming," she repeated, "and when it gets here, the Thunderbird won't be able to stop it alone." They found the first body 3 miles from the camp. It was a logger, judging by the clothes, flannel shirt, work boots, chainsaw still clutched in one frozen hand. He had been killed quickly, his chest cracked open with surgical precision, his heart removed with such care that there was almost no blood on the surrounding snow. But it was what surrounded him that made Creed's blood run cold. Feathers, not the small, delicate feathers of a normal bird. These were massive, black as night, each one longer than his forearm. They formed a circle around the body, arranged with deliberate care, as if someone had placed them there as an offering. "It's marking its kills," Lena said, kneeling beside the body. "Not just taking hearts, marking them, claiming them." "Why?" "I don't know, but look at this." She pointed to the snow around the body. There were tracks, not human, not animal, something with 3 toes, each ending in a claw that had dug inches into the frozen ground. "It's walking," Creed said. "The Thunderbird, it's not just flying, it's walking." "Only when it's weak," Lena said. "Only when it's injured or protecting something too precious to risk in the air." "Protecting what?" Lena didn't answer. She stood, brushing snow from her knees, and looked toward the mountains. "The nest," she said, "it's close." They followed the tracks for 2 hours, through passes choked with snow and ravines where the wind howled like a living thing. The tracks grew fresher, the feathers more numerous, until they crested a ridge and saw it. The valley below was a wound in the earth. Something had torn it open, a landslide perhaps, or an earthquake, or something older. The earth had collapsed inward, creating a bowl-shaped depression 1/2 mile across, and at the center. Creed's breath caught. It was a cavern, massive, black, the entrance big enough to swallow a house, and inside, visible even from this distance, was a light. Not electric, not fire, something that pulsed with its own rhythm, red and gold and the color of a storm. "The nest," Lena whispered, "the Thunderbird's nest." "What's that light?" "The egg, the Thunderbird's egg, it's hatching." Creed stared at her. "You said it laid once every 1,000 years." "I was wrong, or something has changed it, forced it." She turned to face him, and her eyes were wide with fear. "Elias, if that egg hatches before the Thunderbird is ready, if something has disturbed it, poisoned it, the chick will be wrong." "Wrong how?" "Hungry, always hungry. Without the Thunderbird's guidance, without the rituals of the old ones. It will be a monster, pure hunger, pure destruction. It will feed until nothing is left. Then we need to stop it." "How? We can't kill the Thunderbird. We can't even hurt it. The only thing that can stop this is the Thunderbird itself. Then we help it. We find out what's wrong with the egg and we fix it. Lena looked at him for a long moment. You would do that, help the thing that's been killing people. If it's the only way to save more people, yes. She nodded slowly. Okay, we help it, but first we need to understand what's happening, and for that we need to get closer. They descended into the valley, moving carefully, staying to the shadows. The Thunderbird was somewhere nearby. They could hear its wing beats, feel the pressure changes, smell the ozone, but it didn't attack. It seemed preoccupied with something else. The cavern entrance loomed before them, 20 feet tall and twice as wide. The light within pulsed stronger now, casting red shadows on the walls. Stay here, Lena said. I'll go in. No, we go together. Elias, if something happens. We go together, he repeated. They entered. The cavern was vast, larger than it had appeared from outside. The ceiling soared hundreds of feet overhead, lost in darkness, and the walls were covered with something that looked like nests, hundreds of them packed together, each one containing bones. Human bones. They were arranged with care, sorted by type. Skulls in one section, femurs in another, ribs and vertebrae in patterns that suggested ritual, not random placement. The smell was overwhelming, copper and rot in something else, something chemical. The Thunderbird has been here a long time, Lena whispered. These bones, they're centuries old. And these, Creed pointed to a pile near the entrance, fresh bones, still red with meat. The recent kills, the bear, the hikers, the logger. Why collect them? I don't, Lena stopped. Wait, look at this. She had found something on the wall. Drawings. Ancient, faded, but still visible. Stick figures and symbols and something that looked like a map. Clinket, she breathed. This is a Clinket warning. Beware the door, beware the hunger, beware the thing that waits below. Below. They looked at each other. Then, as one, they turned to look deeper into the cavern. The light was coming from a pit. A shaft, really, carved into the stone floor, descending into darkness so complete it seemed to drink the light. The pulsing red glow rose from its depths, and with it came a sound. A heartbeat, slow, heavy, like something massive stirring in its sleep. The egg, Lena said, it's down there. And the mining company, the uranium drilling. They must have hit this cavern, disturbed the nest, poisoned the egg. Can we fix it? I don't know, but we have to try. They found a path, rough stairs carved into the stone, spiraling down into the darkness. They descended carefully, their flashlights cutting weak beams through the gloom, their breath misting in the cold. The shaft went deep, deeper than any natural formation should go, 200 feet, 300, 400. The air grew thick, heavy, charged with energy that made Creed's skin crawl. And then they saw it. The egg. It was massive, 10 feet tall, 15 feet wide, ovoid and perfect and pulsing with that terrible red light. It wasn't organic, not exactly. It looked like stone, but stone that had been polished by centuries of heat and pressure. It looked like volcanic glass, obsidian, but with veins of gold and silver running through it like arteries. And it was cracking. Hairline fractures spread across its surface, glowing from within with the same red light that filled the cavern. Whatever was inside was moving, stirring, preparing to emerge. It's premature, Lena whispered. The poison, it's forcing the hatch. The chick is coming out before it's ready. What happens if it hatches? Chaos. The chick will be insane with hunger. It will feed on everything, animals, humans, the land itself. It won't stop until it's destroyed or until it grows large enough to be reasoned with. How long does that take? Years, decades, centuries, and in that time, she trailed off. Creed understood. In that time, Alaska would become a wasteland. The ecosystem would collapse, and if the chick migrated, if it found its way to populated areas. "We need the mother," he said. "The Thunderbird, we need to bring it here to the nest." "It's already here," Lena pointed upward. "Look." Creed looked up and saw. The Thunderbird crouched on a ledge 40 feet above them, its massive body coiled like a spring, its wings folded against its sides. It had been there the whole time, watching them, waiting to see what they would do. Up close it was more terrifying than Creed had imagined. It wasn't a bird, not really. It was something that wore the shape of a bird, the way the wolf woman had worn the shape of a woman. Its feathers were black, iridescent, shifting with colors that didn't exist in nature. Its body was muscular, avian but wrong, with joints that bent in directions no bird should. And its eyes, those burning red eyes, were fixed on Lena. "Don't move," Lena whispered. "Don't speak, let me." She began to sing. The same song she had sung at the camp, but stronger now, more confident. The words echoed in the cavern, filling the space with sound that seemed to vibrate in Creed's very bones. The Thunderbird listened, its head tilted, bird-like, curious, and then it did something Creed didn't expect. It descended. Not flying, walking, climbing down the wall with claws that found purchase in stone, moving with a grace that was terrible to behold. It reached the floor of the cavern and stood there, 15 feet tall, its head brushing the ceiling, and it waited. Lena's song changed. The words became different, not a lullaby now, but a plea, a request. She sang of the egg, of the danger, of the need for the Thunderbird to reclaim its nest and care for its young before it was too late. The Thunderbird screamed. Not the killing cry they had heard before. This was different. This was pain, agony, the sound of a mother whose child was dying and who couldn't stop it. It moved toward the egg, and Creed saw then what they had missed, what the shadows had hidden. The Thunderbird was wounded. Its left wing hung at a strange angle, broken perhaps, or dislocated. Its feathers were matted with something black that might have been oil, and its eyes, those terrible red eyes, were dimmed, the fire within them fading. "It's been fighting," Lena whispered. "Something hurt it, something fought it for the egg." "What could hurt the Thunderbird?" "I don't know, but whatever it was, it's still here." The egg cracked louder. A piece of the shell fell away, revealing darkness within. And then, horribly, impossibly, something moved inside. The Thunderbird reached the egg and crouched beside it, its broken wing dragging on the stone. It nuzzled the shell with its beak, making sounds that were almost gentle, almost loving. "It's trying to guide the hatch," Lena said, "trying to help the chick come out properly, but it's too weak. The poison, the fight, it's too weak." "Then we help it." "How?" Creed didn't know, but he was moving forward anyway, drawn by something he couldn't name. The Thunderbird saw him coming and tensed, its good wing half spreading, but it didn't attack. "We're here to help," Creed said, his voice steady despite his fear. "We're here to save your child." The Thunderbird cocked its head. Its eyes, those burning, terrible eyes, seemed to look into his soul. And then it did something that made Creed's breath catch. It bowed. Not a bird's bow, but something almost human, a gesture of acknowledgement, of acceptance, of trust. "It recognizes us," Lena said, awe in her voice. "It knows we're trying to help." "Then let's help." Creed reached into his pack and pulled out his first aid kit. "It's wounded, we can. I don't know, we can splint the wing, clean the wounds, something." "You want to give first aid to the Thunderbird?" "I want to try." They worked quickly, moving around the massive creature with a care that bordered on reverence. Lena sang constantly, keeping the Thunderbird calm, while Creed did what he could for its injuries. The wing was broken, snapped cleanly just above the joint. Creed fashioned a splint from branches and cloth, securing it as best he could. The creature's skin, if it could be called skin, was hot to the touch, feverish, and the black substance on its feathers was indeed oil. Uranium waste, probably, from the drilling. They poisoned it, Creed said, cleaning the oil away with water from his canteen. The mining company. They drilled into this cavern, released radiation, poisoned the egg. The Thunderbird tried to stop them, fought them. That's how it got hurt. And now it's dying, Lena said. And the egg is hatching, and if the chick emerges without its mother. She didn't need to finish. The egg cracked again, a louder sound this time like thunder underground, and then the shell split. The Thunderbird screamed. Lena screamed. Creed stumbled back, his hands raised to protect his face as something emerged from the broken egg. It was not a chick. Not exactly. It was wrong. That was the only word Creed could find. The creature that pulled itself from the shell was the size of a horse, covered in feathers that were patchy and wrong, missing in places to reveal skin that was gray and sickly. Its eyes were too large for its head, bulging and milky, and its beak was twisted, hooked at the wrong angle. But worst was the hunger. Creed could feel it radiating from the creature like heat. It wasn't just hungry for food. It was hungry for everything, for life, for energy, for the very existence of the world around it. It's mutated, Lena breathed. The poison, it changed it. The chick, if it could be called that, looked around the cavern with its milky eyes. It saw the Thunderbird, its mother, and it chirped. The sound was wrong too, like static, like screaming. The Thunderbird tried to respond, tried to guide it, but the creature was too far gone. It saw the Thunderbird not as mother but as food. And it attacked. The Thunderbird screamed as the chick's beak closed on its neck, drawing blood, drawing life. The massive creature tried to fight back, tried to push its offspring away, but it was too weak, too wounded, too poisoned. No, Creed shouted, and he didn't know why he was moving, didn't know what he thought he could do, but he was running toward the two creatures, his hands outstretched. Elias, no. The chick turned, those milky eyes fixed on Creed, and he felt the hunger hit him like a physical blow. It wanted him, wanted his heart, his life, his everything. And then Lena sang. The song was different now, not gentle, not pleading, commanding. The words were sharp as knives, hard as stone, and they filled the cavern with power that made the air crackle. The chick hesitated, its head tilted, bird-like, confused. Lena kept singing. She moved forward, placing herself between Creed and the creature, and her voice grew stronger, louder, echoing off the walls in waves of sound. The chick backed away. Step by step, it retreated from Lena's song, its hunger warring with something else. Fear, perhaps, or recognition. The old words, Lena gasped between phrases. The binding words my grandmother taught me, the words that command the spirits. Will they hold it? I don't know, but I know what will. She turned to the Thunderbird. Mother of storms, guardian of the sky, your child is lost but not destroyed. Take back your power, take back your nest. Seal the wound and heal the world. The Thunderbird, bleeding and broken, looked at her, and then it looked at its offspring. And it made a choice. With a scream that shook the mountain, the Thunderbird spread its wings, both wings, the broken one moving with agony clear in every feather, and threw itself at the chick. Not to kill, not to hurt, to embrace. The chick fought, clawing at its mother, drawing blood, drawing life. But the Thunderbird held on, wrapping the creature in its wings, holding it close, and began to sing. It was a song like Lena's, but older, deeper, a song that spoke of love and sacrifice and the endless cycle of life, a song that said, I am your mother, I love you, and I will not let you become a monster. The light began to glow, red at first, then gold, then white. The Thunderbird and its chick were engulfed in it, two shapes merging into one, and Creed had to look away as the brightness became blinding. When he could see again, the chick was gone. The Thunderbird remained, but it was different now, smaller. The mutation, the wrongness, had been absorbed, healed, sacrificed. The creature looked at Lena with eyes that were still red but no longer burning. "Thank you," it seemed to say, and then it collapsed. Lena ran to it, falling to her knees beside the massive head. "It's dying, the sacrifice. It gave everything to save the chick, to change it, to make it right. Can we save it?" "I don't know, I don't think so, but," she looked at Creed, "but we can honor it, we can protect the nest, we can make sure no one ever disturbs this place again." "How?" "By sealing it permanently." They worked through the night, using what explosives they had to bring down the entrance to the cavern. The Thunderbird didn't move, didn't react, just lay there with its eyes closed and its breathing shallow. By dawn, the entrance was buried under tons of rock. The cavern was sealed. The nest was protected. And the Thunderbird was dead. They found its body when they cleared enough rubble to look inside. It had curled around the remains of the egg, protecting it even in death, and its feathers had turned white, pure and clean. "It's at peace," Lena said, tears running down her face. "It died saving its child, saving us." "What about the chick?" Creed asked. Is it still in there?" "I don't know, but if it is, it's healed, it's whole, and when it's ready, when it's grown, it will fly again." They left the mountain as the sun rose, two humans who had faced a legend and lived. Behind them, the sacred headwaters stood silent, a monument to sacrifice and love and the terrible beauty of the natural world. But as they reached the valley floor, Creed looked back, and he thought he saw something, high in the sky, silhouetted against the sun. A bird, massive, black against the light. Watching them. Then it was gone, and Creed told himself it was imagination. Told himself the Thunderbird was dead, the danger was over, the world was safe. But deep in his heart, he knew better. The Thunderbird had called, and someone had answered. And legends, he knew, never truly died. They just slept and waited for the next call. Dr. Morgan Kahn was waiting for them when they returned to Deadwood. He was a small man, thin and nervous, with eyes that darted constantly as if expecting attack. He had flown in from Seattle that morning, summoned by Sarah Chen after she had reviewed the footage from Creed's camera. "You're late," Kahn said, not looking up from his laptop. "I've been waiting 3 hours." "We were burying a legend," Creed said. "Sorry if that interferes with your schedule." "Burying it?" Kahn finally looked up. "You buried the Thunderbird." "We sealed the cavern, the Thunderbird. It died protecting its young." Kahn's face went pale. No, that can't." He stood, pacing. "Don't you understand? The Thunderbird isn't just an animal, it's not just a myth. It's a keystone species, a guardian. If it's dead, if it's really dead, then the balance is broken." "Balance of what?" "Everything." Kahn opened his laptop, showing them a map of North America covered in red lines. "These are ley lines, energy pathways. The Thunderbird guarded them, kept them flowing. Without it," he traced a line from Alaska down through the United States. "The energy is backing up, building pressure. Something has to give." "What happens when it gives?" "Storms, earthquakes, things from the other side pushing through." He looked at Creed, his eyes desperate. "You need to go back. You need to open that cavern. You need to see if there's really a body or if something else is happening." "We saw it die." "You saw it collapse. That's not the same thing." Creed looked at Lena. She was quiet, her face distant, as if listening to something only she could hear. "Lena." "He's right," she said softly. "The Thunderbird isn't dead. I can feel it. In my bones, in my blood. It's changing." "Changing how?" "I don't know, but we need to go back, now." They returned to the sacred headwaters that afternoon, Kahn following in his own helicopter, bringing equipment that Creed didn't recognize. Seismic sensors, electromagnetic readers, devices that clicked and beeped and showed readings that made Kahn's face grow increasingly pale. "It's waking," he said, looking at his instruments. "Whatever's down there, it's waking up." They landed at the base of the mountain and hiked to the sealed cavern. The rubble was still there, the entrance still buried, but something was different. The air was charged, static electricity made their hair stand on end, and the ground was warm, not from the sun, from below. Something's generating heat, Khan said, checking his readings. Massive heat like a furnace. The egg, Lena whispered. The chick, it's growing. But we sealed it. You sealed the entrance, Khan said. But this cavern, it goes deep, miles deep. You didn't seal the bottom. Then what do? We go down. They worked through the afternoon, clearing the entrance, reopening the cavern. It was easier than it should have been. The rocks had shifted, moved, almost as if something had been pushing from the other side. By nightfall, they stood at the entrance to the shaft, looking down into darkness that pulsed with red light. It's bigger, Creed said. The shaft, it's wider than it was. It's growing, Khan agreed. Whatever's down there, it's not just growing, it's building, creating. They descended carefully, using ropes and climbing gear, their flashlights cutting weak beams through the gloom. The heat increased with every foot they dropped, until they were sweating in their winter gear, until the air was hard to breathe. And the sound, that was new, a rhythmic thumping like a massive heart echoing up the shaft. It's alive, Lena said. Whatever it is, it's alive. They reached the bottom and found the cavern transformed. Where before it had been a nest, a place of ritual and power, now it was something else. The walls had grown, stretched, covered with something that looked like organic tissue, pulsing, breathing, alive. The floor was no longer stone but something soft and yielding like skin. And in the center, where the egg had been, was a cocoon. Massive, 20 feet tall, made of the same tissue as the walls, pulsing with red and gold light. And inside, visible through the translucent surface, was a shape. A bird, a massive bird curled in on itself, wings folded, head tucked beneath one wing. It's not the chick, Lena whispered. It's not the Thunderbird either, it's something new. What do you mean? The Thunderbird sacrificed itself. Its life force, its power, everything. It poured it into the chick, trying to heal the mutation. But the chick was too far gone. It couldn't be healed. So the Thunderbird did something else. It remade it, rebuilt it, made something new from the pieces. A new Thunderbird. More than that, Khan was scanning the cocoon with his devices, his eyes wide. The energy readings, they're off the charts, this thing. It's not just alive, it's powerful, more powerful than the original. What does that mean? It means when it wakes up, when it hatches, nothing will be able to stop it. The cocoon pulsed, the light inside grew brighter, and then it began to crack. Run, Creed shouted, but it was too late. The cocoon exploded outward, not with force but with light. A wave of red and gold that washed over them, through them, filling their eyes and ears and mouths until they couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. When Creed could see again, the cavern had changed. The walls were gone. The ceiling was gone. They stood in a vast space, open to the sky, and the sky was not the sky they knew. It was red and gold and filled with storm clouds that moved with impossible speed, forming and dissolving in seconds. And before them, rising from the ruins of the cocoon, was the Thunderbird. Not the wounded creature they had seen before, not the mutated chick. This was something else entirely, something new. It was massive, 30 feet tall, wings spread wide enough to block out the sky. Its feathers were black, but they shifted with color, iridescent, showing hues that didn't exist in nature. Its eyes were gold now, not red, burning with intelligence and something else, something almost human. And it was looking at them, not with hunger, with curiosity. It knows us, Lena whispered. It remembers. The Thunderbird spread its wings and screamed. The sound was not like before, not pain, not rage, not even power. It was a question, a greeting. A "who are you?" in a language older than words. Lena stepped forward. "We are friends," she said, her voice shaking. "We tried to help, we tried to save you." The Thunderbird cocked its head, its eyes fixed on her, and Creed saw recognition there. Memory. "You sang," the creature said, and its voice was like thunder, like wind, like the crash of waves on stone. "You sang the old songs. You tried to help." "Yes." "The others tried to hurt, the ones with the machines, the ones who poisoned the nest." "The mining company," Creed said, "Northern Resource Development. They broke the agreement, the old agreement, the one between my kind and yours, the agreement that says you stay in your places and we stay in ours." "They didn't know." "They knew." The Thunderbird's voice hardened. "They found the warnings, the carvings, the bones. They knew and they didn't care." "What do you want?" Lena asked. Why have you changed?" "I am what I must be." The creature flexed its wings and the air pressure changed, making Creed's ears pop. "The old one died. She gave everything to save what she could, but her sacrifice was not enough. The poison had spread too far. So I am the answer, the new guardian, the new Thunderbird." "But you're different." "I am what the world needs." The Thunderbird looked up at the impossible sky. "The ley lines are breaking. The barriers are failing. Things are coming through, things that should not be. I can stop them. I can guard the passages, but I need sustenance." "Hearts," Creed said quietly. "You still need hearts. Life force, energy, the seat of the soul." The Thunderbird looked at him and its eyes were sad. "It is not what I want, it is what I need." "Then you'll kill again, like the old one did." "No," the creature shook its head. "The old one killed because she was wounded, afraid, poisoned. I kill because I must, and I kill differently." It spread its wings and the sky changed. The red clouds parted, revealing stars that were wrong, constellations that didn't exist, and through the gap Creed saw something. Creatures, things. Massive shapes moving through the void between stars, reaching toward Earth with claws like mountains. "What are they?" Lena breathed. "The hungry ones, the things that live between worlds. They have waited for this moment, for the ley lines to break, for the barriers to fall. They want what we have, life, energy, existence. And you can stop them. I can fight them, guard the doors, hold the barriers, but it will cost, everything costs." The Thunderbird looked at them, its golden eyes burning. "I need your help." "Our help," Creed laughed, the sound harsh in the impossible space. "We're humans, we're nothing compared to you." "You are everything." The creature stepped closer and Creed felt the heat radiating from its body, felt the power like a physical pressure. "The old agreement was between Thunderbirds and humans, guardians and the guarded. We protected you from the things in the dark, and you gave us what we needed, hearts, sacrifice, the willing gift of life." "Human sacrifice." Lena's voice was horrified. "Willing sacrifice, volunteers, those who understood the price and paid it gladly." The Thunderbird paused. "That was the old way, the way it was meant to be. And now I ask something different. Now I ask partnership." "What kind of partnership?" "I am new, I am strong, but I am alone. The old Thunderbirds are gone, their nests destroyed, their kind extinct. I need others, helpers, those who will learn the songs, carry the warnings, prepare the world for what is coming." "You want us to be your priests?" Khan asked, his voice shaking. "I want you to be my voice, my eyes, my connection to the world of humans. The mining company broke the agreement, but it can be remade. You can help me remake it." Creed looked at Lena, at Khan, at the Thunderbird, massive and terrible and somehow vulnerable. "And if we refuse?" "Then I do what I must." The creature's voice was sad. "I hunt, I kill. I take what I need to survive, to guard, to protect. And when the hungry ones come, when they break through, I fight alone, and I may lose." "How many would die?" "Millions, billions, all of you perhaps." The Thunderbird spread its wings, showing the void beyond, the creatures reaching for Earth. They are coming. They have always been coming. The only thing that stops them is guardians like me, and I am the last. Lena stepped forward. I'll help. Lena. I have to, Elias, don't you see? If it's telling the truth, if those things are really coming, then we have no choice. We either help it or we die. And what does helping mean? Creed asked. What do we have to give? Your belief, the Thunderbird said. Your faith. Your willingness to see what others refuse to see. The world has forgotten the old ways, the old agreements. I need you to remember, to teach, to prepare. And in exchange, I guard you, I protect you, I keep the hungry ones at bay, and the creature hesitated. I try to change, to find another way. The old Thunderbirds took hearts because they had to, but perhaps there is another way. What way? I don't know yet, but I am new. I can learn, I can grow if you help me. Creed looked at the void beyond the creature's wings, at the things waiting there, hungry, patient, ancient. Okay, he said, I'll help. One by one they agreed. Khan reluctantly, his scientific mind warring with what his eyes showed him. Sarah, by radio, her voice shaking but determined. Even the other rangers, Tors and Cheney, who didn't understand but trusted Creed's judgment. And the Thunderbird smiled, a terrible smile full of beak and teeth but somehow grateful. Then let us begin. It spread its wings, and the world changed. Not the world of the cavern, but the real world. The world outside. Creed felt himself rising, flying, carried on the Thunderbird's back through the impossible sky. He saw Alaska spread below him, saw the ley lines glowing like rivers of light, saw the places where the barriers were thin, where the hungry ones pressed against the edge of reality. This is what I guard, the Thunderbird said, its voice in his mind. This is what I protect, these lines, these barriers, the places where your world touches theirs. How do we help? You learn, you sing, you remember, and when the time comes, you fight. They flew through the night, through storms and starlight and places that shouldn't exist. Creed saw wonders and horrors, beauties and terrors, all the things that the Thunderbird kept at bay. He understood now, truly understood, what the creature was, what it did, what it sacrificed. And he understood the cost. By dawn, they were back at the cavern. The Thunderbird settled onto the stone, its wings folding, its eyes dimming. I must rest, it said. The transformation, it drained me. I need time to heal, to grow, to become what I must be. How long? Weeks, months, years perhaps. Time moves differently for my kind. And while you rest, you guard, you watch, you learn, and when I wake, the Thunderbird looked at them, its golden eyes serious. When I wake, we begin the work of saving your world. It curled up, tucking its head beneath its wing, and within moments it was asleep. Creed stood there watching it, feeling the weight of what he had agreed to. Beside him, Lena took his hand. What did we just do? She asked. We made a deal, Creed said, with something ancient and powerful and barely understood. We agreed to be its servants, its voice, its connection to humanity. Is that bad? I don't know, but I know this. The alternative was worse. They left the cavern as the sun rose, sealing it again, leaving the Thunderbird to its rest. But this time they marked the entrance, created warnings, recorded everything. And they sang, the old songs, the songs of respect and acknowledgement, the songs that said, we see you, we know you, we honor you. The Thunderbird stirred in its sleep, and Creed thought he saw it smile. They had 6 months. 6 months of waiting, watching, preparing. 6 months of learning the old songs, the old ways, the old agreements that had kept the world safe for millennia. 6 months of building a network. Anthropologists, historians, linguists, anyone who could help them understand what they had become. The Thunderbird slept, but it didn't sleep quietly. Its dreams leaked into the world, causing storms in places that had never seen rain, auroras in places that had never seen stars. People reported strange visions, strange sounds, the feeling of being watched by eyes that burned with gold. Creed grew accustomed to it. He visited the cavern weekly, bringing offerings, not hearts, as the old ways demanded, but songs and stories and the willing gift of belief. The Thunderbird accepted these in its sleep and grew stronger. Lena became its voice. She traveled the country, visiting reservations, speaking with elders, collecting knowledge that had been forgotten. She wrote it down, recorded it, made it available to anyone who wanted to learn. Dr. Khan became its scientist. He studied the ley lines, the energy patterns, the places where the barriers were thin. He developed ways to track the hungry ones, to predict where they would try to break through. And they waited. Then on the autumn equinox, the Thunderbird woke. Creed was in the cavern when it happened. He had been singing, as he always did, the old songs that Lena had taught him. And then the air changed. The temperature dropped. The stone beneath his feet began to vibrate. The cocoon for the Thunderbird had wrapped itself in a new cocoon, larger than the first, began to crack. Red and gold light spilled out, filling the cavern, and Creed had to shield his eyes. When he could see again, the Thunderbird stood before him, and it had changed. It was larger now, 40 feet tall, wings spread wide enough to touch both walls of the cavern. Its feathers were gold and black, shifting with colors that hurt to look at. And its eyes were no longer gold. They were white, pupilless, filled with light. "It is time," the Thunderbird said, and its voice was thunder, was storm, was the end of the world. "They are coming. The barriers are breaking. The hungry ones have found a way through." "Where?" Creed asked. "Everywhere." The creature spread its wings, and in the light Creed saw visions. Cities burning, people screaming. Things massive, terrible things tearing through the fabric of reality. The mining company didn't just poison one nest, they poisoned them all. The ley lines are corrupted, the barriers are failing, and the hungry ones, they are ready. "What do we do?" "We fight." The Thunderbird looked at him, and in its white eyes Creed saw determination, sacrifice, the willingness to die to protect what must be protected. "But I cannot do it alone. The corruption has spread too far, the barriers are too weak. I need a flock." "You said you were the last." "I am, but there is another way." The Thunderbird stepped closer, and Creed felt the heat radiating from its body, felt the power like a physical weight. "The old ones are dead, but their essence remains. In the stones, in the winds, in the memory of the world. I can call them back. I can wake them, but it will cost." "What cost?" "Everything." The Thunderbird's voice was sad. "To wake the dead, I must join them. I must sacrifice what I am, what I have become, and become something else. A bridge, a doorway, a path for the old ones to return." "You'll die." "I will change." The creature paused. "But in my change, in my sacrifice, the old ones will return. They will fight. They will guard the barriers, and they will remember you. They will know that humans kept the old ways, that the agreement was honored even at the end. There must be another way." "There is not." The Thunderbird spread its wings, and the cavern began to shake. Stones fell from the ceiling. The ground cracked. "The hungry ones are here. Now I can feel them tearing at the edges of the world. If I do not act, if I do not sacrifice, everything ends." "Then let me help, let me sing with you, guide you." "You would do that?" The Thunderbird looked at him, and in its white eyes Creed saw surprise. "You would face the end with me?" "I promise to help you, to be your voice, your connection. That doesn't end just because it's hard." The creature was silent for a moment. Then it bowed that strange human gesture. "Then come, Elias Creed, let us end this together." They rose from the cavern, the Thunderbird carrying Creed on its back, up through the shaft, through the mountain into the sky. The world spread below them, and Creed saw the truth. The sky was tearing. In a dozen places, in 100, the blue was giving way to black, to void, to the spaces between worlds. And through those tiers, the hungry ones were coming. They were massive, bigger than the Thunderbird, bigger than buildings, things of claw and tentacle and mouth, with eyes that burned with cold fire and bodies that defied physics. They reached for the world, for the life, for the energy that sustained it. And the Thunderbird screamed. Not a scream of fear, a scream of challenge, a scream that said, "You shall not pass." It dove toward the nearest tier, claws extended, and Creed held on, holding tight to the feathers, singing the songs he had learned, lending his voice to the Thunderbird's power. They hit the creature, the hungry one, with a force that shook the sky. The Thunderbird's claws tore through something that wasn't flesh, wasn't matter, but was real enough to wound. The creature screamed, a sound like tearing metal, and fell back, wounded, into the void. But there were more, dozens more, hundreds. "I cannot fight them all," the Thunderbird said, its voice strained. "I must wake the others. I must become the bridge." "Do it," Creed said. "I'll hold them as long as I can." "You cannot." "Do it." The Thunderbird screamed again, but this time the scream was different. This time it was a call, a summons, a reaching out to the dead, to the ancient ones, to the Thunderbirds that had guarded the world since before humans existed. And they answered. The sky lit up, not with lightning but with shapes. Massive birds, hundreds of them, thousands, emerging from the void between moments, from the spaces between thoughts. They were golden, black, white, every color imaginable, and they were angry. They were the Thunderbirds, the old ones, the guardians, called back from death by the sacrifice of their descendant. And they fought. The battle was terrible to behold. The sky was filled with wings and claws and screams, with the clash of titans that dwarfed human understanding. The hungry ones fought back, tearing at the Thunderbirds, wounding them, killing them, but the Thunderbirds were endless. They kept coming, kept fighting, kept dying to protect the world. And Creed sang. He sang until his voice was raw, until his throat bled, until he couldn't remember anything but the words. He sang the old songs, the songs of respect and acknowledgement, the songs that said, "We see you, we honor you, we are with you." The Thunderbird beneath him was changing. Its body was becoming translucent, fading, turning into light. It was becoming the bridge, the doorway, the path that allowed the old ones to return. "Thank you," it whispered, its voice in Creed's mind. "Thank you for believing, for helping, for being my friend." "Don't go," Creed said, tears running down his face. "Please, there's so much more to do, so much more to learn." There always is. The Thunderbird's form was almost gone now, just a shape of light, a memory of wings. "But this is my purpose. This is why I was made, to guard, to protect, to sacrifice. I don't want you to die." "I won't die. I'll become something else, something more." The light that was the Thunderbird curled around Creed, warm and gentle. "And you will remember me. You will tell the stories. You will keep the old ways alive. That is your purpose, your sacrifice." "I can do that." "I know." The Thunderbird's voice was fading, becoming distant. "Goodbye, Elias Creed. May your skies be clear and your storms be gentle." Then it was gone. The light exploded outward, filling the sky, washing over the battle, and when it faded, the Thunderbird was no more. But the flock remained. Hundreds of Thunderbirds, circling the sky, driving back the hungry ones, sealing the tiers, repairing the barriers. They worked with a coordination that spoke of shared purpose, shared will, shared sacrifice. And one of them, the largest, the most beautiful, descended toward Creed. It was the Thunderbird, but not. The same essence, the same power, but different, older, wiser. One of the ancient ones that had answered the call. "Your companion is gone," it said, its voice like wind chimes, like ocean waves. "But he is not forgotten. He lives in us now, in our memories, in our purpose." "Will you stay?" Creed asked. "Will you guard the world?" We will. The ancient Thunderbird spread its wings, showing the repaired sky, the sealed barriers, the world saved. The agreement is renewed. The old ways are restored. We will guard, we will protect. And you will be our voice, our connection, our bridge to the world of humans. I will. Then come, let us begin. The Thunderbird carried him down, back to the earth, back to the sacred headwaters. The other Thunderbirds followed, settling into the mountains, into the clouds, into the sky itself. They were everywhere and nowhere, visible only to those who knew to look, who knew the old songs. Creed stood on the mountain alone and watched the sun rise over a world that had been saved. He was tired, he was hurt, he was empty. But he was alive. And he had a purpose. He walked down the mountain, back to civilization, back to the world that didn't know how close it had come to ending. He would tell them, he would teach them, he would keep the old ways alive. And sometimes when the storm came, when the thunder rolled across the sky, he would look up, and he would see them, the Thunderbirds guarding, protecting, watching. And he would sing. The songs his grandmother had taught him, the songs Lena had learned from the elders, the songs that said, "We see you, we honor you, we are with you." And the Thunderbirds would answer, with thunder, with lightning, with the promise that as long as they flew, as long as they guarded, the world would be safe. Some legends don't sleep, they wait. And when the time comes, when the hungry ones return, when the barriers break again, they will rise. And they will fight. The Brown Girl's Heart. The crypt had been abandoned for 60 years when Tyler Marsh decided to break in. He was 16, bored and drunk on cheap vodka pilfered from his father's cabinet, armed with nothing but a failing flashlight and the desperate need to prove himself to his friends waiting in the parking lot. The Brown family crypt stood at the back of Chestnut Hill Cemetery, a granite mausoleum that looked like a miniature cathedral, all Gothic spires and weathered gargoyles. The name Brown carved above the entrance in letters that had survived a century of New England winters. "You're really going in there?" his friend Darnell had asked, voice cracking with a mixture of awe and fear. "Like actually inside?" "Watch me," Tyler had said, because at 16, bravado was the only currency that mattered. The iron gate was rusted but not locked, and it swung open with a shriek that made Tyler's skin crawl. The interior was smaller than he expected, a narrow vestibule leading to a sunken chamber where the coffins were housed. His flashlight beam caught dust motes dancing in the air, the remains of silk flowers long turned to dust, and the nameplates of the dead: George Brown, Mary Brown, Edwin Brown, and at the end, in a place of honor, Mercy Lena Brown. Tyler knew the story. Everyone in Exeter, Rhode Island knew the story. Mercy Brown had died of consumption in 1892, or so the official records said, but the rumors were darker. She had been the last in a family claimed by the disease, the final victim of what the townspeople whispered was a curse. Her father had ordered her body exhumed. Her heart had been burned. Her ashes had been fed to her brother. And still, the story said, she walked. Still she hungered. Still she waited. Tyler didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't believe in vampires or curses or any of the stupid stories kids told each other around campfires. He believed in physics and biology and the certainty that dead things stayed dead. But as he stepped closer to Mercy's coffin, his flashlight playing across the marble surface, he felt something shift in the air. A change in pressure. A whisper of cold that had nothing to do with the October wind. He reached out and touched the coffin's lid. The frost on the marble was thick, impossible. The temperature inside the crypt was above freezing. Tyler could see his breath, but barely. Yet the coffin was coated in a layer of ice that looked like lace, delicate and intricate, patterns that seemed to form shapes if he stared at them long enough. Flowers, maybe, or faces. He brushed the frost away with his gloved hand, revealing the name beneath. Mercy Lena Brown, January 1873, January 1895. The dates were wrong, he realized. She died in 1892, not 1895. Someone had carved the wrong year, or the plaque had been replaced, or... His flashlight flickered. Tyler tapped it against his palm, the way his father had taught him, and the beam steadied. He played it across the coffin again, and this time he saw what he had missed before. The lid was open, just an inch, just enough to see darkness within and something else, something that gleamed wetly in the light. Tyler stepped back, his heart hammering against his ribs. He hadn't opened the coffin. The lid had been closed when he entered, he was sure of it. The iron latches were still in place, rusted solid, immovable. Yet there was the gap, undeniable, impossible. "Hello," he whispered, because at 16, even in terror, you still hoped that logic would prevail, that there would be an explanation, a reason, a safe resolution. The sound that answered wasn't a voice. It was a heartbeat, slow, wet, impossible. Thump. Tyler froze, his flashlight beam fixed on that gap in the coffin. Thump. It was coming from inside, from within the sealed coffin of a woman who had been dead for 130 years. A heartbeat, steady and strong, the sound of life where there should only be dust. Thump. Tyler ran. He didn't remember making the decision, didn't remember turning, didn't remember the panic scramble through the vestibule and out into the night. He only remembered the sound following him, the wet, heavy thump that seemed to echo in his chest, matching his own racing heart, and then the darkness outside the crypt, the blessed darkness that meant he was still alive. He didn't stop running until he reached his car, where Darnell and the others were waiting, their faces pale in the dashboard light. "Dude, what happened?" Darnell asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Drive," Tyler gasped. "Just drive now." They drove in silence, Tyler huddled in the back seat, his body shaking uncontrollably. He didn't tell them what he'd heard. He couldn't. They would think he was crazy or lying or trying to scare them. And maybe he was. Maybe the vodka had been stronger than he thought. Maybe he'd hallucinated the whole thing. But when he got home and looked in the mirror, he saw the frost, still clinging to his gloves, his jacket, his hair. Frost that should have melted in the car, in his house, in the warm October night. Frost that smelled like winter and grave dirt and something else. Something that smelled like mercy. Dr. Sarah Chen had spent 15 years studying the history of consumption, tuberculosis, as it was now called, in New England. She knew the Brown family story intimately, had written papers about it, given lectures, debunked the vampire legends that had grown around Mercy's death like poisonous mushrooms. She knew that Mercy had died of tuberculosis, just like her mother and sister before her. She knew that her father, George Brown, had been desperate, that he'd allowed the exhumation out of grief and fear, not because he believed in vampires, but because he couldn't bear to watch his only remaining son die. She knew that the heart had been burned. She knew that the ashes had been mixed with water and drunk. She knew that Edwin had died anyway, 2 months later, because that's how consumption worked. It was a bacterial infection, not a curse. There were no vampires in Rhode Island. There was only tragedy and grief, and the human need to find meaning in senseless death. She believed this absolutely. She had built her career on it. So when she received a call at 2 a.m. from the Exeter Historical Society, telling her that someone had broken into the Brown crypt and that strange things were happening, she expected vandalism, graffiti, teenage stupidity. She didn't expect the frost. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this." The voice on the phone was Marcus Webb, the Society's director, a man who had never sounded frightened in the 10 years she'd known him. "The crypt, it's frozen, inside and out, in October, and there's something on the walls." "What kind of something?" "Words, names. Dr. Chen, your name is on the wall, along with about 50 others." Sarah drove to the cemetery, her hands shaking on the wheel, telling herself that there was a rational explanation. A gas leak, a refrigeration unit, some kind of chemical spill. But when she arrived and saw the crypt, she felt her carefully constructed worldview begin to crack. The frost covered everything, not just the crypt but the ground around it, radiating outward in a perfect circle 30 feet in diameter. The grass was white, the tombstones were white, even the air seemed white, shimmering with ice crystals that caught the moonlight and turned the cemetery into a winter wonderland in the middle of autumn. And the crypt itself, the crypt looked alive. The frost on its surface had formed patterns, shapes, images that Sarah recognized from her research. The faces of the Brown family: Mary, dead in 1883, Mary Olive, dead in 1884, Mercy, dead in 1892, and Edwin, dead in 1892, 2 months after his sister's heart was burned. The faces were perfect, every detail rendered in ice, the expressions frozen in time. Mary's serenity, Mary Olive's youth, Mercy's beauty. Because she had been beautiful, Sarah knew, the photograph still existed in the archives. A young woman with dark hair and large eyes and a smile that suggested secrets. And Edwin, sweet, sick Edwin, his face gaunt with disease, his eyes hollow with approaching death. But there was a fifth face, too, one that Sarah didn't recognize. An old man, stern and angry, his mouth open in a shout. George Brown, the father, the one who had ordered the exhumation, the one who had burned his daughter's heart. His face was screaming. Dr. Chen. Marcus Webb emerged from behind a tombstone, his breath misting in the frigid air. He was wrapped in a heavy coat, his face pale, his eyes wide. How long has it been like this? We don't know. The security company called us when the motion sensors went off. That was 2 hours ago, but the frost, he gestured helplessly. It wasn't here yesterday. I came by yesterday afternoon. Everything was normal. Sarah walked toward the crypt, her boots crunching on ice that should have melted hours ago. The temperature was dropping as she approached. She could feel it, a cold that bit through her coat and sank into her bones. The names on the walls. She needed to see the names. The entrance to the crypt was open, the iron gate unlatched, and inside the vestibule walls were covered in writing. Not graffiti, not vandalism. The frost itself had formed words, letters standing out from the marble in raised relief, as if the cold had carved them. And Sarah saw her name. Sarah Chen. Below it, historian, skeptic, witness. There were other names, dozens of them. Some she recognized, colleagues, fellow researchers, local historians. Others were unfamiliar. Webb, Marcus, director, custodian. And below that, more names stretching down the wall in columns that seemed to extend into the floor itself. "What is this?" she whispered. "A list," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "Dr. Chen, I think it's a list of everyone who's ever studied the Browns, everyone who's ever written about them, everyone who's ever doubted." Doubted what? Marcus didn't answer. He was staring past her, into the sunken chamber beyond the vestibule, his face a mask of pure horror. Sarah turned. The coffins were open, all of them. George, Mary, Mary Olive, Edwin, their lids lay on the floor and their contents. The contents were empty. Not stolen, not vandalized, just empty. The silk linings were pristine, the pillows undisturbed, but the bodies were gone. All except one. Mercy's coffin was still closed, but the frost on its surface was different, thicker, pulsing with a faint luminescence that made the marble seem to breathe. And the nameplate had changed. Mercy Lena Brown. Below it, new words, freshly carved in the ice. "She is not buried, she is seated, she will bloom again." Sarah approached the coffin, drawn by a force she couldn't name, a curiosity that overrode her fear. This was impossible. All of it was impossible. But if it was impossible, then she was dreaming, hallucinating, suffering from some kind of psychotic break. And if she wasn't? She touched the coffin. The frost burned, not with cold but with heat, an impossible heat that seared her fingertips and sent shockwaves up her arm. She tried to pull away, but her hand wouldn't move, frozen in place by something that wasn't ice, wasn't stone, wasn't anything she had words for. And then she heard it, the heartbeat. Thumping. It was coming from everywhere and nowhere, from the air itself, from the ground beneath her feet, from the center of her own chest. Thumping. Dr. Chen, Marcus was shouting, pulling at her shoulders, trying to break her connection with the coffin. Let go, you have to let go. Thumping. The lid began to move, not opening, not like before, shifting. The frost on its surface flowing like water, reforming, reshaping itself into an image. A heart. A human heart rendered in perfect detail, the ventricles and atria visible, the major vessels extending outward like roots. And the heart was beating. Sarah screamed. She didn't mean to, didn't want to, but the sound tore itself from her throat as the frost heart pulsed, and the real heart beneath the marble answered, and she felt something reach out from inside the coffin, something that touched her mind with fingers of ice. She saw things, images, memories, lives that weren't her own. A farm in 1892, the Brown family gathered around a dying boy. A father desperate, willing to do anything, believe anything. An exhumation in the March cold, a pristine corpse that should have decayed. A heart, plump and black-veined, that screamed when it touched the fire. A boy drinking ashes, his fever breaking, his life returning, but not his soul, never his soul. A crypt in the night, figures moving in the dark. The dead rising, not as monsters but as something worse, something that remembered, something that loved. A bargain struck in blood and ice, a promise kept for 130 years. And a future unfolding like a flower, a town consumed, a state consumed, a world. All starting here, all starting now. All starting with the woman in the coffin who wasn't dead, who had never been dead, who had only been sleeping. Mercy, Sarah whispered, and the name felt like a prayer and a curse. The frost released her. She stumbled backward, falling into Marcus's arms, her body shaking uncontrollably. The coffin was still now, the image of the heart fading, the frost retreating into itself like a tide going out. But the names on the wall remained. And Sarah's name was at the top of the list. They got her to the hospital. Hypothermia, they said. Frostbite on her fingertips that would require skin grafts. Shock. Hallucinations brought on by exposure and stress. Sarah knew better, but she didn't argue. She let them treat her, let them sedate her, let them tell her that she'd had a breakdown, that the frost was a gas leak, that the names on the wall were spray paint, that the heartbeat was her own pulse amplified by adrenaline. She let them lie to her, because the truth was too terrible to speak aloud. Mercy Brown was alive, or something like alive, and she had a list of names, a ledger of the living, and Sarah's name was at the top. She was marked, she was chosen, she was next. In her dreams that night, medicated and restrained in a hospital bed, Sarah walked through the Brown family farm as it had been in 1892. She saw Mary coughing blood into her handkerchief. She saw Mary Olive fading away, skin translucent as paper. She saw Edwin, sweet Edwin, his body consumed by disease while his mind remained sharp, aware, terrified. And she saw Mercy. Not the vampire of legend, not the monster of folklore, just a girl, 19 years old, beautiful and sad and so terribly alone, her family dying around her, her future stolen by a disease that had no cure. I didn't want to die, Mercy said, and her voice was the sound of frost breaking. I wanted to live, I wanted to love, I wanted to grow old and have children and watch the world change. You died, Sarah said. In 1892, you died of consumption. I did, Mercy smiled, and her teeth were blue with cold. But something found me, something in the dark, in the cold, in the space between heartbeats. It asked me a question. It asked if I wanted to live. And you said yes. I said yes. Mercy held out her hand, and Sarah saw that it was transparent, the bones visible beneath the skin, the blood frozen in the veins. I said yes, and it changed me. It made me something else. Something that doesn't die, something that grows. What are you? I am mercy, the girl said. I am what remains when mercy is denied. I am the curse that answers cruelty. I am the brown girl's heart, and I am hungry. Sarah woke screaming. The nurses came, sedated her again, and she slept. But the dream continued. Mercy was waiting there, patient and eternal, ready to begin. The brown girl's heart was waking up, and the world was not ready. The next morning they released her from the hospital. Her sister picked her up, worried and confused, and drove her home. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, staring out at the passing landscape, seeing Mercy's face in every shadow. You need to rest, her sister said. Forget about all this. It was just stress, just a hallucination. It wasn't, Sarah said. I need to go back. I need to understand. Sarah, no. The police have sealed the crypt. No one's allowed near it. Then I'll find another way. She waited until nightfall, until her sister had gone to bed, and then she drove back to Chestnut Hill Cemetery. The frost was gone. The police tape was gone. Everything looked normal. But Sarah could feel it, the presence beneath the surface, the cold waiting to bloom. She walked to the crypt and placed her hand on the marble. I'm here, she whispered. Tell me what you want. The frost answered, rising to meet her palm, and the voice that followed was not Mercy's. It was her own. We want what we always wanted, her voice said, speaking from the stone. We want to live, and you, Sarah Chen, are going to help us. The ground beneath her feet began to tremble, and Sarah understood at last that she had made a terrible mistake. She had come to the crypt seeking answers, seeking truth, seeking understanding. But the brown girl's heart didn't want to be understood. It wanted to be fed. And Sarah was standing on the menu. January 1892 was the coldest month in Rhode Island in 40 years. The temperature dropped to 10 below zero and stayed there, the rivers freezing solid, the bay turning to white desert, the very air crystallizing into frost that coated every surface and turned the world into a landscape of ice. In the Brown family farmhouse, just outside the village of Exeter, the cold was inside as well as out. It sat in the lungs of the last surviving child, Edwin Brown, turning his breath into steam and his coughs into explosions of blood that stained his handkerchiefs bright crimson. Edwin was 19 years old. He had been a handsome boy once, strong and active, with his mother's dark hair and his father's serious eyes. Now he was a skeleton wrapped in fevered skin, his cheekbones sharp as knives, his eyes sunken in bruised hollows. The consumption had been eating him for 3 years, ever since his older sister Mercy had died and taken something vital from the world. Drink this, his father said, holding a cup of broth to his lips. George Brown was 62, a farmer and businessman who had buried 3 children and a wife, and now faced the prospect of burying his last. His hands shook as he held the cup, not from age but from grief, the constant grinding grief of watching his bloodline wither. Edwin sipped, the liquid burning his throat, and managed a smile. Thank you, Father. Don't thank me, just get better. George set the cup aside and sat on the edge of the bed. The doctor will come tomorrow. He has a new treatment, something from Europe. There is no cure, Father. We both know that. Don't talk like that. Don't give up. George's voice cracked. You're all I have left, Edwin. Everyone else is gone, your mother, your sisters. If you die, I have nothing. You have your life, your work, your friends. I have memories of death, that's all. George stood, wiping his eyes with a rough hand. Rest now. I'll check on you later. He left the room, closing the door softly, and Edwin turned his face to the window. Outside, the world was white and frozen, the trees like skeletal hands reaching toward a gray sky. It looked like the end of everything, he thought, like the world itself was dying of consumption. He closed his eyes and let the fever take him. In his dreams, Mercy was waiting. She had been waiting since the night she died, since the moment when her last breath had frozen in the January air and her heart had stopped beating. She waited in the cold place, the dark place, the space between living and dying where the rules of the world didn't apply. "Edwin," she whispered, and her voice was the sound of frost breaking. "Edwin, I'm here. I've always been here." "Mercy." In the dream, he was healthy again, his body strong, his lungs clear. "Mercy, I miss you." "Then come to me." She held out her hand, and it was beautiful, pale, and perfect, the fingers long and elegant. "Come and be with me. We can be together, always." "I can't, I'm too sick." "You're not sick, Edwin, you're hungry." She smiled, and her teeth were very white. "I can feed you, I can make you strong, but you have to choose." "Choose what?" "Life or what comes after." She stepped closer, and he smelled her perfume, lilies and winter and something else, something dark and rich. "Father is going to do something terrible, Edwin. Something that will hurt me, something that will curse us both. You have to stop him." "What is he going to do?" "He's going to dig me up. He's going to burn my heart. He's going to think he's saving you, but he's going to kill me. Really kill me. The thing I am now, the thing that's kept me waiting for you, he's going to destroy it." "Mercy, you're dead. You died 3 years ago." "Did I?" She laughed, and the sound was like bells breaking. "Touch me, Edwin, touch me and tell me I'm dead." He reached out, his dream hand trembling, and brushed her cheek. Her skin was warm, soft, alive. "This is a dream," he whispered. "Is it?" She leaned forward and kissed him, her lips cold and burning at once, and he felt something pass between them, something that tasted of copper and winter and eternity. "Wake up, Edwin. Wake up and remember." Edwin woke to darkness. The fire in the hearth had burned low, the room was freezing, and his father was standing over him with a look on his face that Edwin had never seen before. Fear, yes, but also desperation, also hope, also something that looked almost like madness. "Father." "You're awake, good." George's voice was strange, thick with emotion. "Edwin, I've been talking to people, the doctor, the minister, old Mr. Tillinghaste from the village. They tell me there's something we can try." "A cure?" "Not a cure, but a treatment, an old treatment, something from the old country." George sat on the edge of the bed, his hands gripping Edwin's shoulders. "Edwin, I have to ask you something. Do you trust me?" "Of course." "Then you have to do what I say, no matter how strange it sounds, no matter how frightening. Can you do that?" "Father, what are you talking about?" George took a deep breath. "There's a belief, Edwin, an old belief, that consumption, this disease, that it's caused by the dead feeding on the living, that when someone dies of consumption they don't rest, they stay hungry, they reach out from the grave and drain the life from their family." "That's superstition." "Is it? Your mother died, then Mary Olive, then Mercy, all of consumption, all within 3 years, and now you." George's eyes filled with tears. "Edwin, I can't lose you too, I can't." "Father, disease isn't caused by the dead, it's caused by miasma, by bad air, by contagion." "I know what they say, but what if they're wrong? What if the old stories are true?" George leaned closer, his breath hot on Edwin's face. "Mr. Tillinghaste says we can stop it. He says if we find the one who's doing the feeding, if we stop them, the curse will be broken. The living will be saved." "And how do we stop them?" "We dig them up. We examine the body. If it's wrong, if it hasn't decayed, then we know, and we burn the heart. We burn the heart and mix the ashes with water, and the living drink it." George gripped Edwin's shoulders tighter. "Edwin, I think it's Mercy. I think she's the one. I think she's been feeding on us from the grave." "Mercy wouldn't." "Mercy is dead," George shouted, his composure breaking. "Dead, Edwin, and if her corpse is keeping you alive, keeping you sick, then by God I'll burn her to ash." Edwin stared at his father, at the wildness in his eyes, and he understood that George had crossed a line. The grief, the fear, the years of watching his family die, it had broken something in him. He wasn't rational anymore. He was desperate, willing to do anything, believe anything, if it meant saving his last child. "Father, please, this isn't the way." "It's the only way." George stood, his hands shaking. "Tomorrow, at dawn, we're going to the cemetery, we're going to dig her up, and if I'm right, if she's been feeding on you." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Edwin lay awake the rest of the night, listening to his father pace downstairs, listening to the wind howl outside, listening to his own heartbeat slow and irregular in his chest. He thought of Mercy, of her warm skin in his dream, of her kiss that tasted like copper in winter. She had tried to warn him. She had known this was coming. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the darkness. "I'm so sorry." The exhumation took place on a Tuesday morning, March 17th, 1892. The temperature had risen slightly, just enough to turn the frozen ground to mud, but it was still bitterly cold, the sky gray and threatening snow. A crowd had gathered at the Chestnut Hill Cemetery. Not just the curious, though there were plenty of those, but also men with shovels and lanterns, the local doctor named Harold Metcalf, and Mr. Tillinghast, the old man who had suggested this dark remedy. They stood around the Brown family crypt, their breath steaming, their faces pale with fear and excitement. George Brown stood at the front, his face set like stone, his eyes fixed on the iron gate that led to his daughter's resting place. "Open it," he commanded. The workmen pulled at the gate, the hinges screaming in the cold air, and stepped back as the entrance yawned open. The interior of the crypt was dark, the lanterns barely penetrating the shadows, but George didn't hesitate. He strode inside, followed by the doctor and the old man, and the crowd pressed forward to watch. The coffins were arranged in a row. Mary Brown, dead 9 years, Mary Olive, dead 8 years, and Mercy, dead 3 years, the freshest grave, the most likely source. "That one," George pointed. "Open it." The workmen hesitated. There was something wrong about this, something that violated every principle of decency and respect. But George's face was terrible to behold, and they obeyed. The coffin was made of lead-lined wood, heavy and cold. They pried at the lid, the nails screaming, and finally it came free, falling to the floor with a crash that echoed through the crypt. The crowd gasped. Mercy Brown lay in her coffin as if she were sleeping. Her skin was pale but not decayed, her hair still dark and lustrous, her lips slightly parted as if she were about to speak. She wore her burial dress, white and pristine, and her hands were crossed on her chest in an attitude of peace. But she had changed. She had grown. Her fingernails, which had been short and neat at her death, now extended several inches, curving like claws. Her hair, which had been waist-length, now pooled around her like a dark lake. And her face, though still beautiful, seemed fuller, more alive than it had any right to be. "My God," Dr. Metcalf whispered, "this is impossible." "It's the vampire," Mr. Tillinghast said, his voice trembling with vindication. "See how she has fed. See how she has grown. She has been sucking the life from her brother." "Nonsense," the doctor said, but his voice lacked conviction. "There are natural explanations. The cold, the lead lining, it can preserve a body." "For 3 years?" George asked. "Doctor, look at her, look at my daughter." They looked, and as they watched, Mercy's chest moved. It was subtle, just a slight rise and fall, but it was unmistakable. She was breathing, or something like breathing. "She's alive," someone whispered. "My God, she's been buried alive." "She's not alive," Mr. Tillinghast said. "Not as we understand it. She's undead. She's feeding, and we must stop her before she claims another victim." George Brown stepped forward, his face terrible, his hands reaching toward his daughter's body. "Do it," he said. "Cut out her heart." The doctor hesitated. "Mr. Brown, this is desecration." "This is salvation." George's voice was hard as iron. "She has taken my wife. She has taken my daughters. She will not take my son. Cut out her heart and burn it, or by God, I'll do it myself." Dr. Metcalf looked at the crowd, at their frightened faces, at the certainty in George's eyes. He was a man of science, a rational man, but he was also a man of his time. He had heard the stories. He knew the folklore. And looking at Mercy's body, at her impossible preservation, at the faint rise and fall of her chest, he felt his certainty crumble. "Very well," he said, "I will need my bag." The autopsy was performed on a table outside the crypt, in the cold March air, with the crowd watching in horrified fascination. Mercy was lifted from her coffin, and she was heavy, impossibly heavy, as if her body had become denser than living flesh, and laid on the makeshift operating surface. Dr. Metcalf opened his bag and removed his instruments. Scalpels, forceps, a bone saw. His hands shook as he prepared them, and he had to stop twice to wipe sweat from his eyes despite the freezing temperature. "I will make an incision," he said, his voice carrying to the crowd. "Beginning at the sternum and extending to the abdomen, this will allow access to the thoracic cavity." He pressed the blade to Mercy's skin. The sound it made was not the sound of cutting flesh. It was the sound of ice cracking, of something frozen breaking open. The blade skittered across her skin, leaving a white line that slowly filled with black fluid. "The body is frozen," Dr. Metcalf said, more to himself than to the crowd. "Internally frozen." He tried again, pressing harder, and this time the blade entered. But it was wrong, all wrong. The flesh didn't part like normal tissue. It was crystalline, structured almost like wood. And the blood that emerged wasn't red but black, thick as tar, steaming in the cold air. "Continue," George commanded. Dr. Metcalf cut deeper, his hands trembling, his face pale. He opened the chest cavity, spreading the ribs with retractors, and there, nestled in the frozen tissue, was Mercy's heart. It was huge, enlarged to twice the size of a normal heart, swollen and black and veined with silver lines that seemed to pulse with their own light. It filled the entire chest cavity, pressing against the lungs, the liver, the stomach, consuming the space where other organs should have been. And it was beating. Thumping. The sound was audible, impossibly loud in the silent cemetery. The crowd gasped, some falling to their knees, others making the sign of the cross. Thumping. "It's alive," Dr. Metcalf whispered. "Dear God in heaven, it's alive." "Burn it," George said. "Burn it now." They built the fire in a fieldstone pit near the cemetery gates, using dry wood and coal oil to ensure it would be hot enough. Dr. Metcalf removed the heart from Mercy's chest, his hands covered in black blood, his face set in a mask of horror. The heart continued to beat as he carried it to the fire, as he held it over the flames, as he dropped it into the pyre. It beat louder, stronger, the thumps echoing across the cemetery like a drum. Then it screamed. The sound was unlike anything anyone had ever heard. It was a human voice, Mercy's voice, raised in a scream of pure agony that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It went on for 30 seconds, a minute, rising and falling in waves of pain that made the listeners clap their hands over their ears and weep. And then it stopped. The heart burst, shattering like glass, and the fire roared up, turning black and green and then settling back to normal flames. The smell was terrible, sulphurous, like rotten eggs and burning hair. "It is done," Mr. Tillinghast announced. "The vampire is destroyed, the curse is lifted." The crowd remained silent, staring at the fire, at the ash, at the empty shell of Mercy Brown, who lay on the table with her chest splayed open and her heart gone. George Brown walked to his son, who had been brought to the cemetery in a wagon, wrapped in blankets, too weak to stand. He held a cup to Edwin's lips, a cup filled with water and something else, something gray and gritty. "Drink," he commanded, "drink and be healed." Edwin looked at his father, at the madness in his eyes, at the ash that floated in the cup. He thought of Mercy, of her warm skin, of her warning, of her scream as she died for the second time. "Drink," George repeated, his voice cracking. "Please, Edwin, drink." Edwin drank. The ashes tasted of copper and winter and something else, something that burned as it went down, that spread through his chest like fire, that seemed to settle in his heart and make a home there. He coughed once, twice, then the coughing stopped. His fever broke that night. By morning he was able to sit up. Within a week he was walking. Within a month he was strong enough to work in the fields. The doctor declared it a miracle. The minister called it God's will. The villagers whispered that the old ways had worked, that the vampire had been destroyed, that the Brown family was saved. But Edwin knew better. He knew the moment he woke after drinking the ashes, when he looked in the mirror and saw that his reflection was gone. The glass showed the room behind him, the furniture, the window, but his face was not there, just a blank space where he should have been. He knew when he stepped outside and felt no warmth from the sun, just a pleasant coolness that made his skin tingle. He knew when he tried to eat and found that food had no taste, no substance, that it turned to ash in his mouth. He knew when he heard Mercy's voice in his head, not as a memory but as a presence, a consciousness that was sharing space with his own. "Edwin," she whispered. "Edwin, my love, we're together now, forever." "What am I?" he asked, alone in his room speaking to the air. "You are me," Mercy said. "I am you. We are one heart now, one life. Father thought he was saving you, but he only made you mine. I'm not dead. No, you're something else, something new." He felt her smile, felt it on his own lips. "You drank my heart, Edwin, you consumed me, and now I consume you. We share this body, we share this existence, and soon we will share so much more." "What do you want?" "Vengeance," she said, and her voice was no longer soft. It was hard as ice, sharp as knives. "They burned me, Edwin. They desecrated my body. They called me monster. They said I fed on you when it was you I was trying to save." "How were you trying to save me?" "I offered you what I had become, what found me in the cold, a way to live beyond death, a way to be strong. And you were going to accept, Edwin. You were going to join me, but Father ruined everything." Edwin sat on his bed, his hands trembling, and felt the truth of her words. He had been dying. He had wanted to live, and Mercy had offered him a way. "What now?" he asked. "Now we wait, we grow stronger, we plan." Her voice was gentle again, seductive. "And when the time is right, we remind them who the real monsters are." Edwin looked out the window at the village of Exeter, at the church where the minister had preached against superstition even as he blessed the burning, at the houses where the villagers slept, secure in their belief that the curse was lifted. He felt Mercy's hunger, her anger, her need. "Yes," he whispered, "yes, we'll remind them." The winter ended. Spring came, and with it the thaw, but something had changed in the Brown family farmhouse. Edwin was healthy now, unnaturally so, his skin pale but perfect, his eyes bright with an intelligence that seemed almost feverish. He worked in the fields from dawn to dusk, never tiring, never sweating, his body a machine of perfect efficiency. George watched him with growing unease. He had expected gratitude, joy, a son restored to life. But Edwin was distant, cold, speaking only when necessary, and then in words that seemed to come from somewhere else. "You're different," George said one evening as they sat at the dinner table. Edwin wasn't eating, just staring at his plate. "I'm cured," Edwin replied. "Isn't that what you wanted?" "I wanted my son." "You have him." Edwin looked up, and George saw something in his eyes that made him recoil. Red, just at the pupils, just a tint, but unmistakable. "I'm here, Father. I'm not going anywhere." George stood, his chair scraping the floor. "What happened to you? What did that potion do?" "It saved me, just like you wanted." Edwin smiled, and his teeth seemed sharper than they should be. "Why don't you sit down, finish your dinner?" "I lost my appetite." "Pity?" Edwin stood as well, moving with a grace that was inhuman, fluid, wrong. "You should eat, father. You look tired. You look old." "I'm 62, Edwin. I'm allowed to look old." "But you weren't always old. You were young once, strong. You had a family, a wife who loved you, children who adored you." Edwin circled the table, his movements predatory. "And now look at you, alone, abandoned by everyone you loved." "I have you." "Do you?" Edwin stopped behind his father's chair, his hands resting on George's shoulders. "Do you really have me, father? Or did you sacrifice me on the altar of your fear?" George felt the hands on his shoulders, cold as the grave, strong as iron. "Edwin, what are you?" "I'm your son." The voice was Mercy's now, layered over Edwin's, a duet of the living and the dead. "I'm your daughter. I'm the thing you created when you burned my heart. You didn't save Edwin, father. You damned him. You damned us both." "Mercy." "She's here," Edwin said. "She's always here. We share everything now. Thoughts, feelings, hunger." George tried to stand, but the hands held him fast. "Let me go." "Not yet. We have so much to discuss, so many plans to make." Edwin leaned close, his breath cold on George's ear. "The villagers think the curse is lifted. They think the vampire is dead, but they're wrong, father. The vampire isn't dead. The vampire is just beginning." "What do you want?" "Justice, retribution, a chance to finish what I started." Edwin's grip tightened. "Mercy was hungry when she died, father. Consumption had eaten her alive, but now she has an appetite that can't be satisfied, and she wants to share it." George felt something pressing against his mind, a presence trying to enter, trying to consume. He fought it, clinging to his sanity, his identity, his soul. "Stop," he gasped. "Edwin, stop." "I can't stop. We can't stop. We're so hungry, father, so terribly hungry." Edwin's mouth opened and his jaw unhinged like a snake's, revealing teeth that were no longer human, that were designed for tearing, for consuming. "And you're going to feed us." George screamed. He screamed for help, for mercy, for the God he had prayed to for salvation. But the farmhouse was isolated, the nearest neighbor a mile away, and no one heard his cries. When it was over, when Edwin finally released him, George lay on the floor, his body shaking, his mind shattered. He wasn't dead. Edwin hadn't killed him, but something had been taken from him, something vital, something that left him hollow and cold. "Get up," Edwin commanded. "Clean yourself up. We have work to do." George stood, moving like a puppet, his will no longer his own. He could feel Mercy's presence in his mind now, too, along with Edwin's. They were using him, controlling him, making him their instrument. "What work?" he asked, his voice hollow. "The work of vengeance," Mercy whispered through Edwin's mouth. "The work of justice, the work of making them pay." She showed him the plan, whispered it into his mind like a lullaby of death. The harvest moon was coming. The night when the veil between worlds was thinnest, when the dead could walk and the living could be made to suffer. On that night, they would gather the townspeople. They would lure them to the crypt, and they would show them what real monsters looked like. "The villagers," George whispered. "The doctor, the minister, the ones who watched you burn." "All of them," Mercy purred. "Every soul who stood in that cemetery and called me vampire. Every hand that helped dig up my body. Every eye that watched my heart catch fire." "And what then?" "Then we feast." George Brown, father of the dead, father of the damned, walked to the window and looked out at the night. He had thought he was saving his son. He had thought he was fighting evil, but he had created something worse. He had created a god. And on the harvest moon, that god would rise. The weeks passed in a blur of preparation. George, controlled by the dual presence in his mind, traveled through the village, speaking to the people, planting seeds of invitation. He told them that Edwin was holding a memorial service for the family, that he wanted to thank the community for their support, that he had important news to share. The townspeople, relieved that the curse seemed to be over, eager to put the dark winter behind them, agreed to attend. The doctor, the minister, Mr. Tillinghaste, dozens of others who had watched Mercy burn. Edwin spent the days in the crypt, preparing the space, arranging things that George didn't understand. He brought soil from the grave, water from the creek, blood from the animals he killed in the night. He painted symbols on the walls, words in a language that predated human speech. And he talked to Mercy, always talking, whispering, planning, two minds in one body, growing more powerful every day. "They think they're safe," Edwin said one evening, his reflection absent from the mirror he faced. "They think the vampire is dead." "The vampire was never alive," Mercy replied, her voice coming from Edwin's throat but also from everywhere, the air itself vibrating with her presence. "And never dead. We are something else, Edwin, something older, something that was here before humans walked the earth." "What are we?" "We are the cold, we are the hunger, we are what remains when mercy is denied," she laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. "Ironic, isn't it? Named for mercy, killed for mercy, and now becoming the opposite of mercy, becoming justice, becoming retribution." "Will it hurt?" Edwin asked. When we do what we plan to do, will it hurt them?" "Yes," Mercy said. "It will hurt. It will hurt more than anything they've ever imagined, and then it will hurt some more. And when they're finally broken, when they're begging for death, then we'll give them what they really want." "What's that?" "Us," she smiled through Edwin's face. "We'll make them like us, Edwin. We'll share our gift with them, and then they'll understand. Then they'll know what it means to be consumed." The harvest moon rose on October 15th, 1892, bloated and red, casting a bloody light over the village of Exeter. The townspeople gathered at the cemetery gates at dusk, dressed in their Sunday best, carrying lanterns and torches to light their way. George met them, his face pale, his eyes hollow. He led them to the crypt, speaking of remembrance, of healing, of moving forward. They followed him trustingly, these people who had known him for decades, who had no reason to doubt his word. The crypt was lit from within, candles guttering in niches, casting shadows that danced like living things. The coffins had been moved, arranged in a circle around the center of the chamber, and in that center Edwin waited. He had changed. He was taller now, thinner, his skin translucent so that his bones were visible beneath. His eyes glowed red in the candlelight, and his smile revealed teeth that had grown too long, too sharp. "Welcome," he said, and his voice was Mercy's, was George's, was something else entirely. "Welcome to the memorial." The crowd shifted uneasily. Something was wrong, they could feel it, a presence in the air that made their skin crawl. "Where is Edwin?" the doctor asked. "Why isn't he here?" "I am here," Edwin said. "I'm just not alone anymore." He opened his mouth and screamed. The sound was Mercy's death scream, amplified, weaponized, filling the crypt and spilling out into the night. The crowd clapped their hands over their ears, some falling to their knees, blood trickling from their noses and ears. "You burned my heart," Edwin screamed, and now it was Mercy's voice, pure and terrible. "You called me monster, you desecrated my body, and now you will know what monsters really are." The ground began to shake. Not the crypt, but the cemetery outside, the earth itself convulsing. And from the graves, from the frozen soil, from the places where the dead had lain for years, they came. Not Mercy, not yet, but the others, Mary Brown, Mary Olive Brown, the ones who had died before, consumed by the same disease, touched by the same presence. They rose from their graves, their bodies intact, their eyes glowing red, their mouths filled with teeth. The townspeople screamed and tried to run, but George stood in the doorway, his body a barrier, his mind no longer his own. "You wanted proof of the supernatural," he said, his voice flat and dead. "Here is your proof." The dead fell upon the living, not with violence, not with claws and teeth, but with hunger. They reached into the chests of the townspeople, not breaking skin but somehow reaching through, and they pulled. They pulled out hearts, Not physical hearts, but something else. The essence, the soul, the spark of life. They pulled and they consumed, and the townspeople collapsed, hollowed out, their bodies still breathing but empty, vessels waiting to be filled. The doctor tried to run, but Mercy was waiting for him. She had manifested fully now, not just a voice in Edwin's head, but a presence in the air, a ghost made of frost and fury. She touched him, and he felt every moment of his life rewind, felt every death he had failed to prevent, felt every disease he had been powerless to cure. "You should have let me save my brother," she whispered. "You should have believed." He died screaming, his mind broken by guilt and regret. Mr. Tillinghast, the old man who had suggested the burning, was last. He cowered in a corner, his bladder released, his hands raised in prayer. "Mercy, please, I was trying to help. I was trying to save the boy." "You were trying to destroy me." She floated closer, her face beautiful and terrible. "You thought you knew the old ways. You thought you understood the darkness, but you knew nothing. I know now, I see now. Please have mercy." She laughed, the sound like bells breaking. "I am mercy," she said. "I am the mercy you denied me, and now you will receive it." She reached into his chest, and his scream went on forever. When it was over, when the crypt was silent and the dead had returned to their graves, Edwin stood in the center of the carnage and felt empty. Not satisfied, not avenged, just empty. "Is this what you wanted?" he asked the air. "This is what they deserved," Mercy replied, but her voice was distant now, fading. "This is justice. This is murder. Is there a difference?" Edwin looked at the bodies around him, at the hollowed-out shells of the townspeople, at his father standing catatonic in the doorway. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we sleep." Mercy's voice was barely a whisper. "The harvest is done. The hunger is sated for a time. And when you wake, then we feed again." Edwin walked out of the crypt into the red light of the harvest moon. He was alone now, truly alone, the presence in his mind receding into the dark. He was still changing, still becoming something else, and he knew that eventually he would lose himself entirely. But for now he was still Edwin Brown, the last of his line, the keeper of his sister's heart. He walked into the woods, away from the village, away from the life he had known. Behind him the crypt stood silent, the frost already forming on its walls, the dead waiting to wake. The brown girl's heart was satisfied, for now. But it would beat again. It always beat again. And the next time it would be louder. The present day. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the gates of Chestnut Hill Cemetery, her body still weak from the hospital, her mind still fractured from what she had experienced. It had been 3 days since the frost, 3 days since she had heard the heartbeat, 3 days since Mercy Brown had marked her name. The police had closed the investigation. Vandalism, they said, teenage pranks. The frost was explained as a ruptured propane tank from a nearby construction site. The names on the walls were written in paint, easily washed away. The body in the coffin, there was no body, they insisted. Just old bones, long decayed, nothing unusual. But Sarah knew the truth. She had seen Mercy's face. She had felt the cold. She had heard the voice that whispered in her mind even now when she closed her eyes. "Come back," Mercy whispered. "Come back and finish what we started." Sarah had spent the last 3 days researching. She had delved into the Brown family history, the vampire legends, the consumption epidemic of the 1890s. She had found accounts of the exhumation, the burning, the deaths that followed. She had found references to Edwin Brown's disappearance, to George Brown's institutionalization, to the series of unexplained deaths that plagued Exeter for decades after. And she had found the journal. It was in the Exeter Historical Society's restricted archives, a leather-bound book that had belonged to Edwin Brown, discovered in the walls of the farmhouse during a renovation in 1952. The society had kept it hidden, fearing its contents, and Sarah had only gained access through threats of exposure, through promises, through desperate bargaining. The journal was a record of transformation. Edwin's slow conversion from human to something else. His descriptions of sharing his body with Mercy, of feeling her hunger, her anger, her endless need. His account of the Harvest Moon massacre, the deaths in the crypt, the bargain he had made. "She is not dead," he had written. "She is seated. She waits in the cold, in the dark, in the space between heartbeats. And when the world is ready, when the hunger returns, she will bloom again." The final entry was dated 1895, 3 years after the massacre. "I am almost gone now. She has consumed most of me. My thoughts are her thoughts. My hunger is her hunger. Soon there will be nothing left of Edwin Brown, only mercy, only the cold, only the endless need to feed. But I have hidden this journal. I have hidden the truth. And someday someone will find it. Someone will understand. Someone will stop her before she can bloom." Below that, in a different hand, a different ink, someone had added a note. "She cannot be stopped. She can only be contained. The crypt is sealed. The frost preserves her. And every generation someone is chosen to watch, to wait, to be ready when she wakes. You are the watcher now, Sarah Chen. You are the one who must decide, let her sleep or let her feed." Sarah had read the note 100 times, trying to understand who had written it, when, why. But there were no answers, only questions. Only the growing certainty that she was part of something ancient, something that had been playing out for over a century. And now, standing at the cemetery gates, she knew what she had to do. She walked to the crypt, her footsteps crunching on gravel that should have been silent. The moon was full tonight, the harvest moon, though it was only October. The wrong harvest moon, but the right one somehow. A blood-red moon that cast everything in shades of crimson and shadow. The crypt was waiting. The iron gate was open, the darkness within absolute. And on the walls the names had returned, freshly formed in frost that glowed with inner light. Sarah Chen, watcher chosen next. She entered. The vestibule was as she remembered, the marble walls covered in ice, the air so cold it burned her lungs. But the coffins were different now. They were open, empty, the silk lining stained with something dark. And in the center of the chamber, in the space where the coffins had been arranged in a circle, someone was waiting. It was a girl, 19 years old, beautiful and pale, with dark hair and large eyes and a smile that suggested secrets. "Mercy," Sarah whispered. "Dr. Chen." The girl's voice was musical, gentle, the voice of someone who had never done anything wrong in her life. "I'm so glad you came back. I've been waiting for you. I'm not here to join you. I'm here to stop you." Mercy laughed, and the sound was like crystal shattering. "Stop me? How? I'm not a vampire, Dr. Chen. I'm not a ghost or a demon or any of the things your folklore suggests. I'm something else, something older, something that predates human understanding." "Then what are you?" "I am mercy," the girl said, spreading her arms. "I am what happens when mercy is denied, when the dying are left to suffer, when the grieving are given no comfort. I am the answer to cruelty. I am the punishment for those who would burn a girl's heart." "You're a parasite. You feed on death, on grief." "I feed on life, on love, on the bond between the living and the dead." Mercy stepped closer, and Sarah saw that she wasn't walking on the ground. She was floating, her feet inches above the floor in her shadow. Her shadow was wrong. It stretched behind her, reaching up the walls, extending into darkness that seemed to go on forever. And in that shadow, Sarah saw things, faces, the faces of the dead, the doctor, the minister, the townspeople from 1892, and others, hundreds of others. Victims spanning decades, centuries, all absorbed into the darkness that followed Mercy like a cloak. "You consume them," Sarah said. "You take their souls." "I save them." Mercy's smile was gentle, sad. "They live in me, Dr. Chen. They live forever. They feel no pain. They know no fear. They are part of something greater than themselves." "That's not salvation," That's annihilation. Is there a difference? Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out the one thing she had brought with her. Not a weapon, not a stake or holy water or any of the tools of vampire hunters. Something else. A photograph. It was old, faded, but still clear. A portrait of Mercy Brown taken in 1890, 2 years before her death. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that. She was alive. Her eyes were bright with intelligence, her smile genuine, her posture relaxed. She was a girl with her whole life ahead of her. A girl who had died of a terrible disease, yes, but also a girl who had loved, who had laughed, who had hoped. "This is you," Sarah said, holding up the photograph. "This is who you were, before the cold found you, before you became this." Mercy's smile faltered. "Put that away. You were a person, Mercy, a human being. You didn't ask for this. You didn't choose to become a monster. I chose to live. You chose to survive. There's a difference." Sarah stepped closer, holding the photograph out like a shield. "Look at her. Look at who you were. You had a family who loved you, a life ahead of you, friends, dreams, and it was taken from you, not by your father, not by the townspeople, by a disease, by consumption, by something you couldn't control. They burned my heart. They were desperate. They were wrong. But they were trying to save someone they loved, just like you wanted to save Edwin. Edwin is mine now. He chose me. Edwin had no choice. You were in his head, in his body, consuming him just like you consume everyone else." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. "You're not the victim anymore, Mercy. You're the predator, and it has to stop." Mercy's face twisted, her beauty cracking like a mask. "You think you can stop me? With a photograph, with words? I've survived for 130 years. I've consumed thousands. I've grown so powerful that your weapons are jokes to me. I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm trying to reach you." "Why?" "Because someone has to." Sarah set the photograph on a stone pedestal, weighting it with a stone. "Someone has to remember who you were. Someone has to mourn for the girl who died in 1892, not the monster she became." Mercy stared at the photograph, her expression unreadable. The shadow behind her writhed, the faces within it screaming silently. "She's gone," Mercy whispered. "That girl is gone. I'm all that's left." "No, she's still there. Under all the hunger, all the anger, all the need, the real Mercy. The one who loved her family, the one who wanted to live." "I wanted to live." "You wanted to exist. There's a difference." Sarah stepped closer, close enough to touch, close enough to feel the cold radiating from Mercy's body. "Let go, Mercy. Let go of the hunger. Let go of the need. Let the girl you were find peace. If I let go, I die. If you hold on, you kill, again and again, forever." Mercy looked at her, and for a moment Sarah saw something in those red eyes. Something human, something scared. "I'm so hungry," Mercy whispered. "So terribly hungry." "I know." Sarah reached out and took Mercy's hand. It was cold, colder than anything she had ever touched, but she didn't let go. "But you don't have to feed, you don't have to consume. You can choose to be merciful." "Merciful?" "Yes, the thing you were named for, mercy, grace, forgiveness." Sarah squeezed the cold hand. "Forgive them, Mercy. Forgive your father. Forgive the townspeople. Forgive the world that took your life. And forgive yourself." Mercy's face crumpled. Tears formed in her red eyes, froze on her cheeks like diamonds. "I don't know how," she sobbed. "I've been angry for so long. I've been hungry for so long. I don't remember how to stop." "Remember the photograph. Remember the girl. Remember who you wanted to be." Mercy looked at the photograph, at the smiling girl, at the life that had been stolen from her. She reached out with her free hand and touched the image, her frozen fingers tracing the outline of her own face. "I was beautiful," she whispered. "You still are." "No, I'm a monster. She looked at Sarah, at the compassion in her eyes, at the hand that held hers despite the cold. "I'm tired." "Then rest." "Will you stay with me?" "Yes." Until the end. Until the end. Mercy closed her eyes. The shadow behind her began to recede, the faces fading, the darkness withdrawing into itself. The cold in the crypt began to lessen, the frost on the walls melting, the temperature rising. "Tell them," Mercy whispered. "Tell the world what happened here. Tell them the truth. Not the vampire stories, not the legends, the truth. That I was a girl who got sick. That my father loved me. That he made a terrible mistake. And that in the end I forgave him." "I will." "And Sarah." "Yes. Thank you for seeing me, for remembering me, for being merciful." Mercy's body began to fade. Not violently, not in fire or ash, but gently like frost melting in morning sun. Her form became translucent, then transparent, then gone. But before she disappeared completely, she pressed something into Sarah's hand. Something warm, beating, alive. Her heart, the real heart. Not the black, corrupted thing that had been burned, but something else. Something clean, something human. "Keep it safe," Mercy's voice whispered, fading into silence. "Keep it beating." And then she was gone. The crypt was empty. The coffins were closed. The frost was gone. And in Sarah's hand a human heart beat steadily, warm and alive, the last remnant of a girl who had finally found peace. Sarah stood in the silence, holding the impossible heart, and wept. Not for Mercy, but for herself, for the burden she now carried, for the weight of being the one who remembered, the one who watched, the one who kept the story alive. She walked out of the crypt into the dawn, the heart still beating in her hand. The cemetery was empty, peaceful, just another graveyard in just another town. But Sarah knew the truth. She knew what slept beneath the soil. She knew the stories that had been buried, the pain that had been forgotten, the mercy that had finally been granted. She drove home, the heart wrapped in cloth in her pocket, and she began to write. The book took 2 years. She wrote it in a fever, pouring everything she knew, everything she had seen, everything she had felt. She wrote about Mercy Brown, not as a vampire but as a victim. She wrote about George Brown, not as a villain but as a grieving father. She wrote about Edwin, about the townspeople, about the disease that had destroyed a family and created a legend. She wrote the truth. The book was published by a small academic press. It received little attention at first, but slowly it found its audience. Historians, folklorists, people interested in the real stories behind the legends. And then something strange happened. People began to visit the crypt. Not vandals, not thrill-seekers, but pilgrims. People who had read the book and felt something. People who left flowers not on Mercy's grave. She had no grave anymore, her body had been lost long ago, but on the ground where the crypt stood. They left messages: "Thank you, forgive us, we remember you." Sarah visited the crypt every year on the anniversary of Mercy's death. She brought flowers, spoke words, kept the vigil that Mercy had asked for. And always, always she carried the heart. It was smaller now, she noticed, shrinking year by year, beating slower. Someday she knew it would stop, and when it did, she would bury it, finally, properly in the soil where Mercy should have rested. But not yet, not while it still beat, not while Mercy still lived somewhere in the space between heartbeats. On the 10th anniversary, Sarah stood at the crypt and felt something she hadn't felt before. A presence. Not Mercy, but something else. Someone else. She turned and saw a young woman standing by the gates, 19 years old, beautiful and pale, with dark hair and large eyes. But not Mercy, someone new. "Who are you?" Sarah asked. "I'm the next," the girl said. "There is always a next, Dr. Chen. Mercy was not the first, she will not be the last. The hunger continues. The cold continues." No, Mercy found peace, she let go. Mercy found rest, but the thing that made her, the thing that found her in the cold, that thing is still hungry, it always will be. The girl stepped closer, and Sarah saw that her eyes were red, just at the pupils, just a tint. You carry her heart, you keep her memory, and that makes you important, that makes you. delicious. I won't let you continue this. You can't stop it, no one can. The brown girl's heart was just one seed. There are others, so many others, buried in crypts, hidden in caves, frozen in ice, waiting, watching, feeding. Then I'll find them, all of them. I'll tell their stories. I'll make them human again. The girl smiled and her teeth were very sharp. That's the spirit. Keep fighting, keep hoping. It makes the feast so much sweeter. She turned and walked away, her shadow stretching behind her, reaching toward the crypt, then snapping back like a rubber band. Sarah watched her go, the heart in her pocket beating faster as if in warning. The battle wasn't over. It would never be over. The cold would always find new victims. The hunger would always need to be fed. But Sarah would be there, watching, waiting, ready to tell the stories, to remember the names, to offer mercy to the merciless. She placed her hand on her chest, feeling the heart beat against her ribs. I'm here, she whispered. I'm still here, and I remember. The crypt stood silent behind her, but Sarah could feel it watching. The brown girl's heart, the girl who had become a monster, the monster who had found peace. But there were others, there would always be others. And she would be ready. She walked out of the cemetery into the morning light, the heart beating steadily in her pocket. Behind her, the frost returned to the crypt, just a thin layer, just a hint of what had been. Mercy slept, but she dreamed. And in her dreams, she was not alone. In the basement of the Rhode Island School of Design, a graduate student named Jennifer was cataloging donations when she found the box. It was old, wooden, with a rusted lock that fell apart when she touched it. Inside, wrapped in silk, was a glass vial. Inside the vial was a liquid that looked like mercury but thicker, more alive. And suspended in the liquid, something that should have been impossible. A heart small, no bigger than a walnut, still beating. Attached to the vial was a label, handwritten in faded ink. Edwin Brown, 1895. Last sample, handle with care. Jennifer touched the vial, and the heart inside beat faster, as if in recognition. She felt something press against her mind, a presence waking from long sleep. Hello, she whispered. And something answered. Not words, images, feelings, hunger, cold, the endless need to feed. Jennifer dropped the vial, but it didn't break. It rolled across the floor, coming to rest at her feet, the heart inside pulsing with light. She picked it up, unable to resist, and held it to the light. Who are you? She asked. The answer came, not as sound but as certainty. I am the last, I am the beginning. I am the brown girl's brother, and I am hungry, so terribly hungry. And you, Jennifer, are going to feed me. She tried to drop the vial, but her hand wouldn't open. Her fingers closed around it, clutching it tight, and she felt the first touch of the cold, the first hint of the change. The hunger was spreading, the heart was beating, and the story was beginning again. Somewhere in the dark, Mercy smiled. Her brother was awake, and the world would never be the same. Thank you for listening to tonight's stories. If you enjoyed them, please leave a like and subscribe.